people look to try and capture the brand. There's I checked yesterday, there's 2.2 billion results. So if you were to Google in brand wheel image, you've got all these brand wheels that show all the different components that make up a brand, and it's all of those things. And actually a brand is the sum of the parts, really. So and also there's lots of definitions of brand and a brand. The best one I've come across, and it's the one I use all the time because it's the simplest, is a brand is what people say about you when you're not in the room. So that's the easiest the easiest way to describe it. Also, the one I like is when you say brand is a meaning. So it's a meaning that your customers attach to you. So what's good about that one really is it demonstrates that you don't actually own your brand. It's your customers own your brand because it exists in their hearts and minds. So branding is then an attempt to manage that in some way, but knowing that it actually exists in your customers' hearts and minds. Oh, that's a
absolutely. I think that's really interesting. Have we got any examples of brands that you follow that you think really understand their brand and their message at the core? Is there any you that come to mind?
For me? Well, that is what's we're going to get onto the grit of what we're talking about here, because really branding to be sophisticated, or the journey of the brand is to take it from intellectual and logical right through to being emotional and compelling. So a lot of businesses will start with talking about what it is that they do. So that's just really, and that's very logical, it's what they do, but then to go deeper and to really uncover that, the next bit is what is it that you actually excel at? So what is it that you're brilliant at? And then what do your customers gain from working with you, and what's your purpose and your personality? And then finally, what's your customer's experience? So if you can go from this journey from an intellectual and logical, dig deeper, and really capture that emotional and compelling aspect of the brand, then that's really the holy grail, really. So that's the story of your brand. So businesses that tend to do that well, and this is getting into the thrust of where we are now, is those brands that can communicate their purpose. So there's loads and loads of research out there, but the one that captures it for me, and I've got this on my website, is 80% of brands outperform the market when they're clearly linked to a purpose. So it's about being able to capture that, and you know yourself that you're drawn more to brands that you relate to through their values. So you might buy Who Gives a Crap toilet paper instead of Tesco's, and you might even pay more for it because you're paying for that feeling part of something and aligning to brands. So more and more.
Can I just ask quickly, if anyone knows how to use the reactions, the thumbs up, does anyone actually subscribe to Who Gives a Crap on this call?
Oh, do you? I don't.
Yeah, absolutely.
I just like the packaging. I like the packaging. It just.
And because it arrives in a box. I don't know how often, but the feeling that it gives me when we see the box and the tongue-in-cheek comments that they've wrapped the box in and stuff like that, it's just. I
thought you were going to say the feeling it gives you when you.
No, it's recycled, so it's not. It's definitely not the double quilted that you get out of Tesco. But I think it's a great example.
Louise, never heard of it. So it's you buy it online and it's recycled. So you're not, it's sustainable, and you buy it, you subscribe to it. So at times of COVID-19, while we're talking about toilet paper, it's going to run on toilet paper.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So what I try and do is help businesses really to really get back to the core and the purpose of why they started their business in the first place, because it's very easy to forget that. So yeah. And in terms of you're thinking about buying decisions for your customers, then people are busy. People are busy and they've got more options than ever. But ultimately, people will buy from people that they like, and people will buy based on emotion, and then they back that up by logic, and it's not the other way around. So, and it's really trying to get that perfect balance when you're defining your brand and really communicating what it is that you're about and what you stand for.
Absolutely. I think so. Moving on from that, I've noticed in our notes you've got the perfect balance of solving a pain point and you.
Yeah.
Do you want to expand on that?
Right. Well, marketing is often seen, if you read all the textbooks and so on and follow everything, and all the marketing experts tell you how to do marketing and branding, often they'll say, well, what's your customer's pain point? And then how do you address that pain point? And that's absolutely true. Of course, you need to understand your customers intimately to be able to position your brand to them. But for me as well, there's a bit of that suggests that you're a bit of a chameleon in a way, that you agitate a pain point and then you address that pain point. And for me, it's about a balance of, yes, understanding your perfect customer, but also being really clear about who you are as a business owner and what your business does and what you stand for, and then balancing that up, as opposed to trying to agitate and then solve a pain point. So and it's less about being different, so marketing is about how are you different. So in this very busy world, when there's so much choice, it's very difficult to be different, because probably somebody's thought of it before you. But you can make a difference by being very clear about the difference that you make, and the difference that you make which is in line with your purpose, if that makes sense. And to me, that is what true authenticity is. So there's so much stuff on social media about being authentic and having an authentic brand, and I feel that if you have to say it's authentic, then what is it? What would it be if it's not authentic? So it's a bit like saying somebody's nice or someone's professional or someone's honest. Well, if you feel you have to say that, then it kind of raises questions. So authenticity should be just a given, and so to me, true authenticity is being really clear about who you are and the purpose of your business and what you're trying to do and the difference that you want to make. And that could be a small difference, or that could be a big difference around. Not everyone has a purpose of saving the planet. A purpose doesn't have to be this huge, big massive thing. Your purpose could be just to be kind to people. But whatever that purpose is, if you own it and live it and breathe it through your brand and through your marketing, you will attract the right customers to you, because they're attracted to you because of who you are and what your brand stands for.
And I think you're probably going to go on to explain this, but I think it's so important in the current climate that your brand really does align with who you are, and it runs through the veins of the business, because I think how brands and businesses and organizations and individuals are reacting and responding to the current situation is how they're going to be remembered. And I think if there's any misalignment between how they're projecting their brand and how they actually are as businesses and individuals, then customers and consumers are going to see right through that. So yeah, I think that's a really valuable point.
I mean, you just look at LinkedIn. I mean, I'm not a massive LinkedIn user. I've only started really using it since about Christmas. And for me personally, I felt it was such a noisy place, and I was quite intimidated to post in this on this platform. And what I noticed in the start of lockdown was LinkedIn just went mad, and everybody, and it was kind of jokey. It was jokes and it was memes, and it was talking about working from home and going kids at home and so on. and it went a bit mad, and then it just completely dropped off a cliff. And for about a week, I was on LinkedIn. It was like tumbleweed, and even posts were coming up more than once on my same thread, and that never happens. So it just meant there was a dearth of content, because I think that after the kind of overall in it together kind of messaging, and we care about you as a customer, can we help? It just people didn't know what to say. So I think there's now no better time than to be absolutely clear about what it is that you're here to do. And for me, I feel like the world is so slowed down. So the world's slowed down so that so people can actually get on and really be very clear about what their brand's about. I read some research, which was yesterday in preparation for this. I was and Kantar, they're a massive global market research agency, and I came across some research that said that only 8% of consumers expect brands to cut their advertising. So there's a lot of chat on LinkedIn at the moment about, is it appropriate? Is it appropriate to be selling at a time like this? And people not being really clear about how to communicate, because it might seem a bit icky and a bit salesy. But that research is basically saying that only 8% are expecting brands to cut their advertising. However, 75% agreed that absolutely you shouldn't exploit the situation. So really what that's saying about is, it's not saying that you need to then hide away until all this is over. Far from it. It's more about being having an appropriate tone. So it's more about the tone of voice than it is about just stopping putting your brand out there. So I feel that at the moment, people like everybody, they've got far more time in their hands. So they're questioning what's really important to them, perhaps for the first time, and questioning what it is that's of value to them, and those things might be quite unexpected. Relationships, human interaction, the planet, our health. We thought about our health, but we put that right up there. So again, from this research, it was saying that how do consumers expect brands to behave? Well, 77% feel that they should be helpful in this, and they call it the new everyday. And 75% to say that brands should be keeping them informed about how you're reacting to the situation, so what you're doing, and there's a whole raft of stuff there about what you're doing to look after your staff, what you're doing to look after your staff, making sure you've got a duty of care. And 70% is about offering a reassuring tone. So it's not necessarily about this, everyone's talking about pivoting and building a new brand and so on, but it's rather, I think, about a reset and being more appropriate to the time, and your tone being helpful, encouraging, relatable, human, and just and meaningful. So does anyone else, what are people thinking about this? I mean, are they, when you're what are people struggling with about their brand, if anything? Is it not sure how to communicate, or what to do, or what if you want to pivot your business? Or
if anyone, you can all unmute yourselves, I think. So if anyone has any questions, just unmute yourself. We can make this more of a conversation.
Well, for us, we're a care home operator, so we've, if anything, been busier than ever, to be honest. And of course, been in the media spotlight massively. And I think what the COVID situation's done for us is kind of naturally made us tweak our messaging, because a huge focus for us was on staff support. So, and Lee actually has been involved in some of that messaging himself. We started last year to using the phrase everyday heroes for our care home teams, and we've been using that in recruitment messages, so we've just really amplified that. And that's, I think, a message to our staff, but also the public, that we're absolutely there for them. They're frontline, only being recognised right now as frontline, by the way, but they have been from the get-go. And so that's become part of our branding naturally, I think.
Yeah.
And really, in knowing the brand and knowing the people behind the brand, it's evident, like Kirsty spoke before, that it actually aligns. So it's not just a projection, it aligns with how you live out daily within the care homes.
It is. So, I mean, for us, it's been really nice in a way to have a focus on staff and staff support, and we've done a lot internally with our internal staff comms. We've developed an app for our staff. We've turned our monthly newsletter into a weekly newsletter, and it's chattier and upbeat and all that stuff. So I think that's in a way become part of our identity as much as being a great care home operator.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for sharing, Gillian. Appreciate that.
Yeah.
We've got another question from Petra. I don't know if you can see that. I'll read it out. So it's asking how to communicate good news during this time. For example, getting excited about new funding, non-COVID support related. PS, I would rather not unmute myself. So how to communicate good news and potentially being a little bit worried about doing that. Have you got any insights on that, Kirsty?
So I don't think there is any harm in communicating good news. It's more about just the appropriateness of it. So it's I mean, if you're funding, I mean, I was on a call yesterday and someone was talking about their funding. So I think it's just about being human. It's about being relatable. So it's not. I mean, if you use a braggy tone, oh, look at me, I've just won all this funding, I'm all right, then of course that's not appropriate. But to say, you know, this is, I've got this funding or whatever your good news is, I think that's, you know, you shouldn't not communicate these things. And going back to that research, you know, only 8% of people expected brands to cut their advertising. So, you know, I don't see any harm in that. It's just about using the right tone, which is appropriate for the, and being mindful of the situation that we're in.
Sure. Thank you very much. I've got a question. I'm just going to take us. It's a framework that you use, Kirsty, and we've spoken about it before, but it's your purpose, way, and impact framework, and balancing that against the usual terms that people would use when developing their brand, like mission, values, that sort of stuff. Because people actually sometimes find that part of developing a brand quite difficult, because they sometimes feel that they're just perhaps putting words onto a page, but it lacks that connection, potentially because it feels like they're forcing to get their value statement onto their website or their mission statement. Could you just explain your approach through purpose, way, and impact?
Right. So oftentimes when you go to start planning your business, there's a framework: mission, vision, and values. And I think that's most people are quite familiar with that. But I don't know about you, but I always get mission and vision mixed up, and you know, and it's very, and when you come to do your values, I've seen so many businesses that will say, oh, our values are, or we're honest, we're innovative, we're professional, and they don't really mean very much. So and mission, vision, and values tends to be quite, in my mind, it's quite insular. You know, so what is it that you want to achieve? So your mission, you might say, oh, I'm going to be the social media agency of choice. You know, that might be your mission. But I mean, any business in that field could say that. So purpose, way, and impact is just an alternative model, and I came across it about 2 years ago. And if you think about your purpose, so what is it that you want to do with your business? You know, so what are you about? How do you want? And it sounds a bit grandiose, but how do you want to make the world better, a better place? What's the mark that you want to leave? And again, going back to what I was saying before, it doesn't have to be this massive purpose. It could just be a very simple, small purpose that means something to you. And then you think about the way, so the way that you make that happen. And that's when you think about that, the way that's unique to you. So what is it about the way that you deliver your purpose that's unique? And then the impact is the impact that you make on your customers, on the people around you, on the world, if that's as big as you want to go. So the purpose, way, and impact model is far more outward looking and far more, rather than being insular. Mission, vision, and value tends to be a kind of a desk exercise where you sit and you kind of work it out. And your values aren't really something, I see a lot of businesses that just make up these values, but your values aren't really something you just make up and then tell your staff that's what they are. Your values are what you it's in your heart. It's you live and breathe your values. So if you think about the way that you do things, that comes very much from you and your heart. So I use purpose, way, and impact with my clients because I just think it helps them to think bigger and think more outward looking rather than insular. That makes sense.
Brilliant. Yeah, I love that. I think it's. And
you can Google that. I mean, you can Google it, purpose, way, and impact. I read it years ago, about 2 or 3 years ago. It was an article in the Harvard, I think it was Harvard Business Review or something, and then it's quite a well-known model now. So.
And I often find that a really good way to research that is to look at brands that you aspire to, that you feel that really are living their values, and then just to go on to their channels and look how they communicate those and how it flows and it doesn't feel forced. So if you've got any brands that you really resonate with, just go check them out online, and no doubt they will be communicating their values, albeit maybe not in a traditional let's put it on the About Us page and make it a desk exercise and write it up. It'll be a more broader way that they approach it. Cool. Kirsty, we were going to move on and speak about the next part, which is the tactics, the brand awareness. But just before we do that, I wondered if we could step it back to tone of voice, tone of communication. I think this is a really important part for brands to get right. And I just wondered if there was any, tactics or approaches or practical advice that you could give around helping businesses and people really clarify their tone of voice. Is there any approach that you could share with us that people could take away with them today?
Well, I just think it should be your tone of voice is unique to you. So just like we all have our own individual personalities, so, and that's what makes me unique. So I have my personality, you have your personality. That's what's unique to you. So similarly for your business, it's just being you. And some people are quirky and funny and outgoing, and other people are more serious and more thoughtful and more considered, and other people are more corporate and so it's just really, tone of voice is really just speaking the way that feels true to you, and at the moment that is what's appropriate for the time. It's helpful, it's encouraging, relatable, human, and meaningful. And I think, I came across, it was a couple of days ago, someone posted on LinkedIn, and to sum all this up really, and I thought it was really, really perfect, was helping is better than selling, inspiring is better than telling, and progress is better than perfect. So I'm going to attribute that to David Reed, who has an agency called Because Brands Matter, and he put that on LinkedIn the other day, and I messaged him and I said, can I use that please? Because I think that just sums it all up. It's not something necessarily you need to overthink. It's just being you and just being natural.
Awesome. I'm going to see if anyone's willing to share, but does anyone have clarity on their tone of voice, on how they communicate with their audience, and would maybe be willing to come off mute and share it? It would be good if we could get an example of someone that does.
I'll jump in if that's all right.
Awesome. Yeah.
So I don't know if everyone else is like this, but when we talk about why did you start your business in the first place and what's your purpose, my purpose when I started all this was very different to what it I think is now. So I started it because I'd had a baby. I didn't want to go back into RBS anymore and help everybody else do their job and be successful. I decided I wanted to have my own business. And at the time, I started a sort of almost like a virtual PA company, which very quickly went into headhunting internationally, and it totally changed, which then led me into kind of learning all about business development and sales, which then changed again now into helping people align their marketing and business development processes to ensure they don't let prospects slip through the net. So how can they make these relationships real? So, you know, marketing and digital processes bring the prospects in, but how then do you nurture them into real human meaningful relationships so that you can make them, you know, ongoing into clients? So face-to-face stuff rather than digital, I suppose. So my purpose has totally changed, because now what I want to do is grow the business, because my purpose now is to provide a future for my daughter. She wants to go to university in Europe somewhere, have a nice life on the beach, maybe if I retire, or maybe have a business that I can now not have to stay in Edinburgh once she's off to uni, and I can go anywhere in the world and work from anywhere I like. So my purpose now is that. So it's very different. And not only is the business very different, but my purpose is different. And Lee knows very well that I'm struggling massively at the moment with getting messaging right.
Yeah.
Because some of what I do is appropriate to small business. Some of what I do is appropriate to bigger businesses and teams within these businesses. And some of it is just too, I don't know, I'm struggling with that just now. So the messages, I think, sometimes come across a little bit mixed. I've got such a massive arsenal of experience and you know, training and coaching and activity, you know, driving kind of solutions that I can pass on to people. But how do you condense all that into something that is attractive to everybody that you could help? And that's what I find difficult.
Kirsty, I'm going to flip this to you, because I think it would be quite nice to hear your brief, if possible, but just how Louise could potentially strip that back and maybe get to the root of the messaging.
Yeah. It's a really, really common problem, and I think it's the more you know, the more difficult it is.
Yeah.
And so when someone says, "Can you just tell me what you do?" I just freeze. I think, how can I sum up what I do in 30 seconds? I can tell you what helped me, and I'm going to recommend a book to you. I've got it here. Right. This is the simplest book that I've ever read. But I read it about a year ago, and it's called Building a Story Brand by Donald Miller.
Oh yes.
And I read it, and I have read it about 3 times, because the first time I read it, I thought, it can't be that simple. It just can't be that simple, you know. And what does he know? He doesn't know my business. And I read it again and read it again. But actually, it's a really brilliant framework, and it's a really easy read as well. So, but what he does is he gives you a framework to try and break down to build your brand story, if you like, which is, and it starts with saying that in every story there's a hero, and that hero finds a guide, and then the guide helps the hero of the story, and give you a clue, the hero isn't you. So that's a mistake that a lot of businesses make, that they think that they are the hero of the story, but your customer is the hero of the story. So you're the guide in the story, and then how you help them to transition. So what is that transition? And then so I think it's a 7-stage process. It's a hero who has a problem, who meets a guide, who shows them the way, avoids failure, and and it's something like this. So it's like a 7-step process, and it was a framework, and I would recommend maybe try that. But having your customer in mind, and then matching it with who you are and what you're about and what you're trying to achieve.
Awesome.
Thank you. That's really helpful. I've heard of Donald Miller before. Actually, I get a lot of. I've subscribed to them. So yeah, they do a lot of videos. But again, it just starts getting me confused, because I think, well, I can do this and I can do that and I can do the next thing. So now I'm starting to kind of try and think, well, how can I package the bits that I do into bite-sized chunks that people can tap into. So that's where I'm at the moment.
Absolutely, and I think a bit of research into looking at, because you've helped a broad range of customers and you've impacted a broad range of customers, so it's really doing a bit of research for me, looking at what types of customers have you delivered the most value to, and what products and services previously have really benefited and changed their world. Maybe just trying to narrow that focus a little bit and just chip away at it. I think that would help provide some clarity as a point.
Thank you.
No worries. So what, Kirsty, will kind of move the conversation on to, I guess what's next is building brand awareness, and we can just make it quite a relaxed conversation, because this is the bit that I get quite excited about, the tactics. Once you've got the brand clarified and you've covered the foundational stuff, which is so important. And that's why I think this episode is so crucial, because when brands spend time on this and don't skip it, they often skip this part, the messaging, the tone, the value proposition. When they get that right, their tactics become effortless and so much easier, and they don't feel as hard and as overwhelming. And when I say tactics, really what we're meaning is the channels and tools that you're using to reach your ideal customers. Is there anything, Kirsty, you would add on the sort of brand awareness part? I've got loads that I can speak about, but I'm interested to hear, just once you've got that initial foundational piece, what you would look at next.
Yeah, well, you've just said it all. I mean, I agree totally. I mean, oftentimes when people think of marketing and branding, they think about, well, should I be on Snapchat, or should I be on Facebook, or should I be on LinkedIn, or should I be on, and what are the tactics that I should be using? But really, once you're very clear on who your ideal customers are, what your own purpose is, what your own tone is, and your own messaging, then the tactics almost fall out of that, because you're on the platforms where you're going to find your customers. So where are your customers hanging out, and where and how do you connect with them where they are? And it's very easy, I think, because we've got all these tools, you've got all these different platforms, to feel that you have to be on them all. But really, it's less is more. It's better to do fewer things well than it is to be spreading yourself really thin and trying to be everything to everybody. And it's being really, really focused. I mean, there's a term that's I'm reading a lot about, it's niching down, which sounds very American, but when you're really clear about what you're trying to do and who you are and your purpose, and then the tactics, you go to Lee and you say, right, I need this, and this, and he can help you to it's more about finding the right platforms for you and your business that suit you and your tone and your customers.
And I think the marketing world are quite guilty of this, because there's peaks and troughs, and there's waves and trends where certain marketing experts will say that you need to be omnipresent, so you need to be everywhere, or a new trend will come along, or a new channel like TikTok, and all of a sudden it's kind of like FOMO, like fear of missing out, like I've got to be on TikTok. But I think especially now, like there is this whole thing around like being heard and being seen in a sea of noise, a bit like what you mentioned earlier, Kirsty, like using LinkedIn as an example. People are getting overwhelmed with messaging and sales and just content, overload of information. But you need to step back, because I think it's important that if you're not having a one-to-one dialogue with your ideal target customer or target customers, there might be multiple different types of customers, then essentially you're having a dialogue with no one, and that's definitely not a good place to be. So it's really important that you put the time and effort into analysing where those customers are actually spending their time, and not just putting content out on different platforms where it won't get seen, it won't get heard. So I think that's really important, and that comes back to really what that comes down to is things like your value proposition that you mentioned earlier, and your customer personas, and that's delving into the granular detail of what does your customer look like, what are their desires, what are they scared of, like what are they nervous about, what kind of publications do they actually like to read based on their demographics, their age, where are they, what platforms are they actually spending their time on. And I wrote down an example, the Virgin Money Lounge. So I thought this was quite interesting, and the reason I'm mentioning this is because so we have some clients with multiple different customer personas, so they address different demographics, and that actually in a sense makes it quite harder, because some businesses might only have one type of customer that they need to target, but when you've got multiple different customers, it's even more important that you really delve into what each individual type of customer looks like, feels, what emotions they have, what they want from a brand. And the reason I mentioned Virgin Money Lounge is I thought it was a good practical example, because whenever I've been in a Virgin Money Lounge, you'll notice, and you guys might have been, you might bank with Virgin Money, or you might have been in a lounge, but there's always a slightly older demographic that spend quite a lot of time in Virgin lounges, and I find this really interesting. But I think there's multiple reasons for it, but it's down to what they expect as consumers, and I think they want a bit of a slower pace, they want great customer service, they want comfort, they want the newspapers, they want connection. So they it's actually a bit of a social experience to go to a Virgin Money Lounge. And I've wrote down one of the most important things is they like free tea and coffee. Like, that's just fantastic. But when you take that one type of customer that you'll find in the Virgin Money Lounge, you then need to ask yourself, how does Virgin Money reach that type of consumer? And it's definitely not on Instagram. It's definitely not on Facebook. It's probably not on LinkedIn because they're retired. Instead, it might be through one-to-one relationships with bank managers. It might be on their website. And interestingly, when I went on Virgin Money Lounge's website, they don't have a link to an Instagram channel on their site. Therefore, it isn't important to them. And it might be things like word of mouth and referrals, and potentially, headed up letters that are posted out to these customers, explaining the added value of a Virgin Money Lounge. So I think that was a really good example of a type of persona and how you would reach that persona, and hopefully that'll get the juices flowing as to where your customers for your businesses are spending their time, and how they like to be interacted with.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I had another example. Does anyone here give us a thumbs up? Does anyone know Bros Bagels? Now, it's going to be localized. Does it? Oh, we've got one thumbs up.
Oh, how does that work? How does that work?
It's in reactions. We've got two. Gemma knows them. So Bros Bagels are a Canadian-style bagel and coffee shop chain in Edinburgh. really vibrant business, a lot of personality, really pricey bagels, but it's just like, I just want to be part of their brand. And I think I'm probably in their ideal customer demographic. But the reason I mention them is they've just released a campaign for, I guess, for isolation during COVID-19. And it's bang on their tone of voice and personality. And it's basically, they've called it Fill Your Own Hole. So they are posting out the components of a bagel so that it doesn't get soggy. So they're posting out the bagels, the tuna in a pot, some of the sauce, the pickles, and they're encouraging the demographic to basically fill their own hole and make their bagel. And so there's two things. I paid £25 last week to get these bagels delivered to me. I could have went to Tesco and got them for £1.99. So that's the first thing. The reason I bought those bagels is because I love being a part of their brand. Like, I love consuming their content. And the second thing is, I really want to record a video and get mentioned on their Instagram page, filling my bagel, and the innuendos that come along with that. Like that, I want to do that. But that sort of campaign probably wouldn't go down that well on LinkedIn. Absolutely not. Maybe, I mean, it's evolving, LinkedIn as a platform, but at the moment, I would say that's an Instagram or Facebook campaign. So I thought
not everybody would feel with that. Not everybody would feel totally comfortable with that.
No, absolutely not.
And that tone of voice. So
yeah, but I think the reason it works for them is they're just comfortable with who they are as a brand. If that was a marketing ploy, sales tactic that wasn't actually followed through with an authentic tone of voice, people would see right through it. And I wouldn't have paid £25 for a bagel. Yeah, so I thought that was a good example. Kirsty, is there anything you want to add on the tactics front?
No, I think you've covered it all really well. Does anyone have any questions? Because we can sort of wrap up. It's hard to follow all these comments at the same time.
I'm maybe just quickly going to pick up on Lauren's comments. So she's mentioned a few different brands that have went beyond just selling a product. I thought was quite interesting. So she's mentioned Tom's with their One for One campaign. Lauren, I'm going to put you on the spot very quickly. We've got a couple of minutes just before we finish up, but would you be able to summarise that, some of those examples you've given us?
Yeah, sure. So Tom's is obviously the shoe brand. They did a campaign, 1 for 1, where if you bought a pair of their shoes, then they were given a pair of shoes to sort of poverty-stricken countries, mostly kids. So it was just a nice campaign that they did. It's like 1 for 1, obviously. And then Dove's Real Beauty campaign, you probably remember, I think they did some adverts as well for that, it was all about, obviously there was such a stigma in fashion and stuff for a while of beauty that it wasn't very diverse, and it was like 0 size models or whatever it happens to be, and they kind of were one of the first kind of major brands that really broke into that, like being a bit more diverse and welcoming like every kind of sort of appearance and physical differences among women. And then Peak Designs give a shot. I'm a big fan of that brand. They started as a photography brand. They do bags and tripods and all that sort of stuff. But they have a big community of climbers, so like rock climbers and stuff like that. So their Give a Shot campaign was a non-profit voluntary campaign that they did, where I think they gave around 20% of their profits to the national parks. Under current presidency, they obviously cut back for supporting the national parks, so they give to that over in the US. And I think they're doing one just now as well, where they're trying to, I think there's a new bag that they're selling that they're giving quite a big part of the profit, if not all of it, to like health, given the current pandemic. So it's just brands like that you hear stuff like that, and I don't know, it makes you feel good for buying, just like what Lee was saying earlier.
Just on that actually, which thoughts just occurred to me. there's a brilliant website which I subscribe to called B1G1. So if you're sort of thinking right now that, oh well, how can I be helpful? How can I sort of give back in some way and be seen to be giving back and being sustainable and caring about causes? Well, B1G1 it stands for Big Buy One Give One, and it's built for small businesses, and I give back. But you can buy something as little as you can buy a brick to build towards building a school in Cambodia. You know, so it's not about giving massive amounts, but you can just do something very small for your business. So the way I use it in my business is that whenever I write a proposal, I then will buy something which is not a monetary value, it's not a huge amount, but which is aligned to my customers. So I was doing a proposal for a credit union, and then I bought bookkeeping skills for women in Sudan, you know, or I was doing a proposal for a college, and I bought a bricks to build a school in somewhere else. So it's not expensive at all, but it's a way that it's all aligned to the Scottish Sustainable Development Goals. So you put into this platform the Sustainable Development Goals that mean something to you, and then it brings up all these projects that you can support. And it's not huge amounts of money, but it's a way of demonstrating what's important to you, and also how you can align that to your customers. So
was that B1G1? Did you say, Kirsty?
This is b1g1.com.
Cool. I'll put that in the follow-up email,
Yeah,
just so everyone has a link to it.
There's another one called Work for Good, because B1G1 tends to be a more global, you know, a global thing. But there's another one, Work for Good, where which is a UK-based one.
Okay, cool. I'll write them in.
Awesome. So, Kirsty, closing thoughts. If you maybe just want to wrap up for us, any final golden nuggets, and then we'll open up to see if anyone's got questions, and people can leave if they've got an appointment. Okay, well, I've got two things. One's a closing thought, and one's something to leave you with. So I was reading the Scottish Government's a framework for decision making, which came out this week, and the very, very last sentence of that document says, when things come apart, there's always the opportunity to put them back together differently. We can work together to design the Scotland we want to emerge from this crisis. So I think now is a brilliant time for everyone to be really thinking about what it is that they want to deliver through their businesses, and now is the time. And for me, on using LinkedIn again, I just feel that I've burst into a noisy room, and there's a hush befallen, and people are waiting. So our space has been created for more meaningful, thoughtful, human, and I think when we come out of this, marketing will look very, very different. The noise won't work anymore. And customers will be drawn more to the just being normal and being a human being. So my closing thought is, when you go off this call, and I was watching a webinar, or it was a kind of a video the other day, and it was a video by a creative, a branding creative, and he said that the best question that he was ever asked during a pitch, so he was pitching his idea for this business, was the customer said to him, so I don't know who the customer was how do you go from a company who just sells stuff to people to being a company the world wish existed? And you can imagine if you're in a pitch and your customer asks you that question, that's going to floor you. But if you can nail that, then we're all going to be fine, and we're going to emerge out of this better for it, and the world will look a very different place. Love it. I think that probably makes me a total marketing geek, but that phrase gave me goosebumps a wee bit, because I know how important it is, and if people get that right, it's just unbelievable. Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Kirsty. I think everyone will agree that's been really insightful and really practical. Yeah, thanks for your time. We appreciate it.
And thank you for, this is my first webinar, so thank you very much for coming on and being so nice. And and if anyone's got any questions, because I haven't been sort of following all these comments in the questions, but if anyone has any questions.
What I'm going to do is unmute everyone, and if anyone wants to ask a question, ask away. If anyone needs to leave, thank you. We'll send a follow-up email, and thanks for joining us.